Within the walls of prisons, where hardened criminals prey upon the weakest links,
What are you doing? Bags in the shower! Bags in the shower! Bag alert! Bag in the shower!
I'm on my way.
the shower is often considered a danger zone, with the only defense being your naked body. Imagine being surrounded by bloodthirsty felons looking to even scores or escalate gang wars with little to no security or surveillance in sight. Get ready to explore haunting stories of prisoners getting stabbed, violated, or even murdered behind bars as we unveil cases of inmates caught in the prison's shower. Richard Loeb. When you decide to commit a grave crime such as murder with no definitive motive other than the sheer thrill of it, you can only expect karma to catch up with you in due time. This was the case of Richard Loeb, a highly intellectual criminal who met a bloody end in the bathroom of the prison he was incarcerated in. Born on June 11, 1905 in Chicago, Illinois, Richard was the son of a wealthy and influential lawyer who exhibited a remarkable intellect from a very young age. Graduating from the University of Michigan at just 17 years old, Richard met his partner in crime, Nathan Leopold. Nathan was a man who shared a similar background of privilege and exceptional intelligence and had already completed an undergraduate degree and was on his way to studying law. The two young men bonded over their mutual interest in Nietzschean philosophy, which espoused the idea of the Übermensch, or Superman, a concept they twisted to justify their belief in their superiority over others. This twisted ideology culminated in their decision to commit what they deemed the perfect crime. On May 21, 1924, they abducted and murdered 14-year-old Bobby Franks, a distant relative of Richard. Their meticulous planning involved luring Bobby into a rented car, killing him with a chisel, and subsequently disposing of his body in a remote culvert. They even attempted to extort a ransom from Bobby's family, despite having already killed him. However, a pair of glasses left at the crime scene would eventually be traced back to Nathan, leading to their swift capture and subsequent confessions. The trial of Nathan and Richard in the summer of 1924 became a media sensation, not only because of the heinous nature of their crime, but also due to the involvement of the renowned attorney Clarence Darrow. Darrow, known for his opposition to the death penalty, mounted a defense that focused on the psychological immaturity and emotional instability of his clients, arguing that they were products of a privileged yet neglectful upbringing. His impassioned plea, which spanned over 12 hours, argued against the death penalty on moral and philosophical grounds. The trial culminated on September 10, 1924, with Judge John R. Caverly sentencing both Nathan and Richard to life imprisonment for murder and an additional 99 years for kidnapping, thus sparing them from execution. This outcome, while controversial, was seen as a victory for Darrow and a testament to his legal prowess and moral convictions. Young men were initially sent to Joliet Prison before being transferred to Stateville Penitentiary, where they would spend the remainder of their lives. Life in Stateville Penitentiary was harsh, and the notoriety of Nathan and Richard's crime made them targets among fellow inmates. On January 28, 1936, Richard met a brutal end in the prison's shower area after being attacked by James Day, an inmate with a history of violence. James used a straight razor to inflict over 50 wounds on Richard, including a slash on his throat, resulting in his death. James claimed self-defense, alleging that Richard had made a sexual advance to him, though this claim was met with skepticism, as there was no record of Richard being a predator in prison. Despite the severity of the attack and the public outcry, James was acquitted of murder charges, with the court accepting his version of events. Nathan, devastated by the loss of his partner in crime, continued to serve his sentence until his parole in 1958. After his release in 1958, he moved to Puerto Rico to live a quiet life, dedicating his remaining years to research and education until his death in 1971. Jeffrey Dahmer. The man everyone knows as Jeffrey Dahmer went down in history as one of the most gruesome serial killers the world has ever seen. There was so much publicity surrounding his life, crime, and trial that he is still remembered for the gruesome atrocities he committed. Born on May 21, 1960, in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, Jeffrey grew up in a troubled household with frequent parental arguments and his mother's battling mental health issues. With Jeffrey showing signs of disturbing behavior from an early age, his gruesome killing spree actually began in 1978 with his first victim, Stephen Hicks. Over the next 13 years, he would go on to murder 17 young men and boys by luring them to his home with promises of money or companionship, only to drug, strangle, and dismember them. His crimes involved necrophilia and cannibalism, and preserving body parts as grotesque trophies. Throughout these years, none of Jeffrey's victims made it out of his den alive, except for Tracy Edwards, who would eventually lead to his arrest and persecution. Jeffrey was arrested on July 22, 1991, when the police, alerted by Tracy's escape, discovered photographs of dismembered bodies and human remains in his apartment. During his trial, Jeffrey pleaded guilty to all charges under the claim of insanity, admitting to all 17 murders in chilling details. He was found guilty and sane enough to receive 15 consecutive life sentences, totaling 957 years in prison. Initially held in solitary confinement at Columbia Correctional Institution in Portage, Wisconsin, Jeffrey later expressed remorse for his actions and claimed to have become a born-again Christian, though this did little to alleviate the horror and anger his crimes had generated. On November 28, 1994, Jeffrey was murdered in prison by fellow inmate Christopher Scarver while performing a work detail in the bathroom of the prison gymnasium. The trio had been left unsupervised for about 20 minutes before Jeffrey was found on the floor with severe head and facial injuries. Scarver attacked Jeffrey and another inmate, Jesse Anderson, with a 20-inch metal bar from the weight room, and Jeffrey was pronounced dead an hour after the attack. Scarver later stated that he was disgusted by Jeffrey's crimes and believed that prison authorities had deliberately left them unsupervised. Dylan Roof, an American white supremacist who is known for committing one of the most heinous hate crimes in United States history, on June 17, 2015. Dylan Roof entered the Emmanuel African Methodist Episcopal Church in Charleston, South Carolina, during a Bible study session, and after sitting with the group for nearly an hour, he stood up and began shooting. Roof killed 9 African-American parishioners in the historic African-American church, including the senior pastor and state senator, Clementa C. Pinckney. Roof specifically targeted the church because of its historical significance and the race of its congregants, driven by a deep-seated ideology of white supremacy. In the aftermath, a manifesto was discovered on Roof's website, revealing his racist beliefs and his intent to start a race war. This manifesto and his social media presence, filled with hate symbols and racist rhetoric, provided clear evidence of his motivations. The massacre shocked the nation and reignited intense debates on race relations, gun control, and the symbols of the Confederacy. After the incident, Roof was arrested in Shelby, North Carolina, and faced both state and federal charges. On the federal level, he was indicted on 33 counts, including hate crimes resulting in death, obstruction of religion, and firearms charges. The federal trial began in November 2016, where Roof, representing himself for part of the time, showed no remorse for his actions. In December 2016, a jury found him guilty on all charges, and by January 2017, he was sentenced to death. The federal court's decision to seek the death penalty was notable, given the complex debates around capital punishment, especially in cases involving hate crimes. Roof's trial included testimonies from survivors and family members of the victims, who expressed their grief and loss, underscoring the profound impact of his actions. Additionally, Roof pleaded guilty to state murder charges on April 2017, receiving 9 consecutive life sentences without the possibility of parole, ensuring that he would never be released from prison. While awaiting his federal trial, Roof was housed at the Charleston County Detention Center, where he became a target for other inmates due to the notoriety of his crime. On August 4, 2016, Roof was assaulted by fellow inmate Dwayne Stafford, a man who saw his chance to attack after his cell was not properly locked. Stafford attacked Roof in the jail's shower area, and the pair got into a fistfight that resulted in minor injuries on Roof before Stafford was restrained by corrections officers. The incident raised significant concerns about Roof's safety in custody, prompting his legal team to call for increased protective measures. The attack highlighted the challenges of ensuring the safety of high-profile inmates, particularly those involved in racially and politically charged crimes. Roof was subsequently placed under tighter security, and the incident brought to light issues related to jail management and the protection of inmates, regardless of their crimes. Currently, Roof is on death row at the United States Penitentiary in Terre Haute, Indiana, under strict security measures. Jesse Anderson. The death of Jesse at the hands of Christopher Scarver could be seen by many as nothing short of karma. Guilty of murdering his own wife, Jesse met a horrible end in the bathroom of the prison gymnasium along with famous serial killer Jeffrey Dahmer. On April 21, 1992, Jesse took Barbara to a restaurant in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. After dinner in the parking lot, he stabbed her multiple times in the face and head, and to deflect suspicion, he inflicted superficial wounds on himself by stabbing himself 4 times in the chest, fabricating a story about being attacked by 2 black men. Jesse even presented a baseball cap, which he claimed one of the assailants had dropped, to the police, but it was later discovered that he had purchased the cap himself, aiming to mislead investigators and frame innocent people. In August 1992, Jesse was found guilty of first-degree intentional homicide. During the trial, evidence dismantled his fabricated story, including the purchased cap and inconsistencies in his self-inflicted wounds. His attempts to mislead the investigation ultimately failed, and he was consequently sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole for 60 years. On November 28, 1994, Jesse was attacked in the prison bathroom at Columbia Correctional Institution in Portage, Wisconsin, by fellow inmate Christopher Scarver, alongside serial killer Jeffrey Dahmer. Scarver, armed with a metal bar from the prison's weight room, brutally bludgeoned Anderson and Dahmer. While Jeffrey died moments later after the attack, Jesse succumbed to his injuries 5 days later, on November 30, 1994. Scarver later explained that he was repulsed by Anderson's crime and his attempt to blame it on black men, which motivated the attack. Jamie Brugada Valdez. Money sign Suede, a young rapper born under the name Jamie Brugada Valdez, emerged as a significant figure in the West Coast rap scene. Hailing from Los Angeles, he was recognized for his raw lyrics and authentic representation of his experiences, which resonated with a growing fan base. His music often depicted the struggles and realities of urban life, earning him respect and admiration in the rap community. As his career began to ascend, he faced legal challenges that would ultimately alter his path. Valdez was convicted on gun charges, which, although not involving direct violence, were serious enough to result in a prison sentence. This conviction interrupted his burgeoning career and highlighted the precarious balance between his artistic pursuits and the legal troubles that shadowed his life. On May 2, 2023, Valdez's life was tragically cut short in a brutal attack at the California Correctional Institution in Tehachapi. Valdez was ambushed in the shower area, a part of the prison known for limited supervision and increased vulnerability, and was stabbed multiple times by fellow inmates. Despite the efforts of prison staff to provide medical assistance, Valdez succumbed to his injuries. The reason for the attack on Valdez was never really known, as there was no evidence he had gotten himself mixed up with the wrong crowd. Perhaps he was just in the wrong place at the wrong time, and unfortunately paid the price with his life. Whatever the reason for the attack was, we may never truly know. The attack on Money Sign Suede was not only a devastating blow to his family and friends, but also a stark reminder of the often dangerous conditions inmates endure, even those who, like Valdez, were serving time for non-violent offenses. Inmate Rebecca. In prison, cellmates usually have each other's backs. But for Rebecca, an inmate held in a women's prison who didn't expect to share a cell with her future abuser, this wasn't true. After moving cells due to an argument, she was assaulted in the showers by her new cellmate, a self-acclaimed transgender inmate. This attack left Rebecca traumatized and depressed, making basic hygiene like taking a shower a trigger for her. On January 2024, Rebecca, in her 30s and just over 5 feet tall, was serving a short sentence for burglary when she was ambushed and molested by her cellmate Carol. Sources say she chose to share a cell with 2 female prisoners, and Tremaine Carroll, a transgender inmate after a previous altercation with a former cellmate. Carol had a criminal history, including theft, firearm offenses, and a 1990 conviction for kidnapping, robbery, and sexual assault. Carol, 51 years old, 6 feet 2 inches, and weighing about 200 pounds, identifies as a trans woman who has not undergone reassignment surgery. California law allows transgender inmates to request housing consistent with their gender identity, and Carol, previously housed in a male facility, was transferred to the facility where Rebecca was incarcerated in August 2021 after numerous complaints of harassment and assault. Carol became known for supporting transgender inmate programs and claimed not to be a threat to women. However, Rebecca states that Carol showed sexual interest in her immediately after moving cells. And despite rejecting Carol's advances, Rebecca claimed she was attacked and assaulted in the prison shower less than 24 hours later. The gruesome act left invisible scars on Rebecca that she is constantly reminded of till date. The perpetrator, Carol, denied the accusation, but has been transferred back to a men's facility. Charlie Bott. Experiencing oppression firsthand can open one's eyes to the harm their own actions may have caused others, revealing the profound impact of their behavior. For a person like Bott, he never knew what it felt like to be a victim till he became one himself. Charlie Bott, a 24-year-old from Stanley Road, Burncross, Sheffield, was involved in a violent incident where he punched and kicked a man who was trying to help his distressed partner. The incident was detailed in a Sheffield Crown Court hearing, and prosecuting barrister Ben Thomas explained that Bott's victim had come to assist a neighbor who was outside in her underwear, shouting for help. The victim armed himself with a hammer for protection as a car carrying Bott, another male, and a female arrived. An argument ensued, and Bott charged at the complainant. According to Mr. Thomas, one male threw a barrier at the victim, who was then repeatedly punched and kicked, with his hammer being taken away. The complainant suffered multiple injuries, including grazing, a head wound, bruising, and scratching to his back and arms. After his arrest, Bott, who had a history of previous convictions, pleaded guilty to assault and bodily harm for the attack on July 12, 2019. Defense barrister Michael Cain Soothhill mentioned that Bott had shown significant maturity over the 2-year period since the incident, and also pointed out that Bott had recognized that his alcohol consumption had led to his aggressive behavior. Bott's time in custody, following a separate incident where he broke a window and spent 7 weeks on remand, had a profound impact on him, especially after he was attacked in the showers by 8 males during his time at HMP Doncaster, Marshgate. On the said day, Bott never expected what was about to happen, as fellow inmates cornered and jumped him while he was in the bathroom. Upon his release, Bott demonstrated a marked change in his behavior, abstaining from alcohol and securing his own residence. According to Mr. Soothhill, Bott was ashamed of his past actions under the influence of alcohol and had come to realize how badly his life had turned out. Recorder Megan Reese sentenced Bott to 18 months in custody, suspension for 18 months, with additional requirements for rehabilitation, 80 hours of unpaid work, and alcohol abstinence monitoring. Bott was also ordered to pay £200 in compensation and £400 in legal costs. The Rat. One unspoken and unwritten law every inmate follows is to always mind your business and never be labeled a snitch. Although allies may exist in prison, it is still a tough ground with everyone watching their own backs. The saying, "snitches get stitches," is brought to life within the walls of a prison as snitches or rats get punished by fellow inmates, often in horrible ways. An inmate who did not understand the gravity of the situation and went about spilling secrets he shouldn't have, paid a great price for his indiscretion. On February 7, 2022, John Armstrong entered the shower room with the said inmate and attacked him. The victim, who was getting dressed, was punched by Armstrong on the right side of his face and asked why he had been snitching on other inmates. He threw multiple punches and wagged his finger as a warning, according to prosecutor Tom Heath. The victim, reluctant to name his attackers, suffered a facial wound that needed glue to seal. Armstrong, aged 28, was identified through the security camera and remained silent during his interview. Nottingham Crown Court was informed that Armstrong had 6 previous convictions for 11 offenses, including a Section 20 wounding from May 2016. And at the time of this attack, he was already serving a 2-year sentence for assault. Raweh Javed, Armstrong's defense lawyer, stated that Armstrong offered no excuses for his behavior and understood the impact of his actions on the victim, admitting it must have been a horrible experience. Armstrong, residing at Lamadon Mill Court, Leamington, Newcastle upon Tyne, admitted to assault causing actual bodily harm, but claimed it was coincidental. However, Nottingham magistrates ruled the assault was premeditated and planned. Stuart Sprawson, speaking on Wednesday, noted that Armstrong had shown remorse and empathy for his actions only in the last 24 hours. He criticized Armstrong's behavior for causing disruption within the prison system, as it undermined the regime. Armstrong, appearing through a video link from Wakefield, received a 22-month prison sentence, along with suspension for 24 months. He was also sentenced to 200 hours of unpaid work and ordered to pay £250 in compensation to his victim, inmate Brian. Had anyone warned Brian that his drug charge would lead to far more than he ever anticipated, he might have steered clear of drugs and crime altogether. After receiving a minor sentence in the early 90s, Brian was sent to Greenville, Virginia, a place where some of the most notorious and dangerous criminals were housed. Violence was a common occurrence at all times in this place, and Brian, being the newbie at the time, knew about it and tried his best to stay out of trouble. The showering unit in this facility was an open space, with everything and everyone out there for all to see, and as a facility completely full of men, it was a recipe for disaster. In order to avoid issues, Brian would take his showers very early in the morning or very late at night, a time when it was highly unlikely for him to be caught vulnerable. Regardless of Brian's careful planning, his luck ran out one day when he was caught alone in the shower by another inmate. Safe to say, it did not end well for Brian, as he was assaulted in unnatural ways and beaten by the other inmate. When it was over, Brian was left in the shower, but when he finally emerged, something had changed within him. The attack affected him more deeply than anyone knew, even though everyone knew what happened. And sadly, not much was done to rectify the situation in Brian's favor. For many days, Brian avoided the shower room and kept to himself. But what his fellow inmates did not know was that Brian was plotting his own revenge in the most gruesome way imaginable. As he waited for the perfect time to strike back, Brian was making a rough makeshift instrument in the form of a shank that he sharpened daily. The day would finally come during lunch in the prison cafeteria, as Brian walked straight to his attacker without care for anyone and plunged his rough, sharp weapon into the man's neck. Brian's revenge did not stop, as he repeatedly stabbed his attacker over and over again in the face, eyes, and mouth, not stopping until he was satisfied. At this time, his attacker had already suffered a painful and agonizing death in the full view of the fellow inmates and prison guards. When he was spent, Brian simply sat down, covered in blood, and waited to be led away by the guards. Brian was charged with premeditated murder, and his sentence increased from a measly few years to a life sentence without parole. Aaron Coderre. The tragic death of Aaron Coderre on May 31st, 2020 at the California healthcare facility in Stockton sparked a federal wrongful death lawsuit filed by his family. Coderre, a convicted inmate serving a life sentence for first-degree murder and assault, was found in the showers with multiple stab wounds to the neck. Joshua Rudiger, another inmate notorious for a previous murder conviction involving drinking blood, was charged with Coderre's murder because he was the last person in close proximity to Coderre before his death. Rudiger, dubbed the vampire slasher for his past crimes, claims to be a 2,000-year-old vampire and reportedly attacked Coderre in the prison showers. According to reports, Rudiger had a history of violence, including the murder of a homeless woman and attacks on others in San Francisco. The lawsuit, filed by Rita Coderre, Aaron's mother, alleges negligence on the part of prison authorities for failing to ensure Aaron's safety and provide adequate medical care following the attack. Rita Coderre claims that her son did not receive timely and appropriate medical attention, exacerbating his injuries and ultimately leading to his death. Authorities at the California healthcare facility stated that they initiated life-saving measures immediately after discovering Coderre's injuries, but he succumbed to his wounds. The lawsuit contends that Aaron Coderre's mental health needs were not adequately addressed, leaving him vulnerable to such attacks from other inmates. Rita Coderre asserts that her son's tragic death could have been prevented with proper care and supervision. accusing prison officials of neglecting their duty to safeguard inmates' well-being. Thank you for watching. See you in the next video.